Alright guys, so this is episode 3 in my clearing the PSVR2 backlog series. It's really just a way of chronicling actually getting through some games, because I've got a hell of a lot of games for that system, and for a long while I was just kind of sitting on them and not really trying to get through them, you know. So I've actually got through 3 games. Can't technically say I certainly haven't 100%ed all of these games, but I'm confident in saying that I've sort of finished them, for want of a better term. You'll see what I mean when I get to sort of talking about them. This is kind of a retro themed episode to this video as well. All 3 games have sort of retro elements to them in different ways, and the first one I actually have on disc, and it is called Retropolis 2 Never Say Goodbye. So obviously Retropolis 1, I've no idea about that game. It's not out on PSVR, but it's basically sort of a film noir themed sort of murder mystery kind of thing, or crime investigation game, and it's all right. It's pretty cool. It's sort of got this funny sort of like almost stop motion effect to a lot of the graphics. The characters sort of move in these sort of staccato stop motion ways, but not all the time, which is a little strange. Sometimes the animation is smooth movement. Sometimes it has this sort of choppy, stylized look, which is a bit odd, but it looks all right. It's certainly not sort of taking advantage of the PSVR2. The graphics are not very good. You know, it's obviously a multi-platform game. Doesn't look like it's been optimized much for PSVR2. So there's no lighting really. It's all baked in lighting, if you know what that means. So it's like, yeah, there's no dynamic lighting, which would really help give it some depth to the environments. It's a shame they couldn't add that for PSVR2. It's certainly, you can tell it's something that was, you know, made first with standalone in mind. It's quite a basic looking game graphically, but functional, does what it needs to do. You're basically moving around, solving puzzles, and they're usually, well, I think they're pretty much always environment-based puzzles. So they're quite good. They're logical, they're fair. I did get stuck on a couple of occasions just because one or two of the solutions or the things you have to do is not obvious, a little bit obscure. I mean, I'm sure I could have found those solutions by myself if I just kept going and just checked absolutely every single thing in the environment, but I didn't have that patience to do that. So there was a couple of occasions where I used the walkthrough. Now what's kind of cool about this game is actually you can actually access an online walkthrough in game on the pause menu. So you just bring that up and it goes straight to a web page, and you can skip to whatever chapter you're in, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. Sometimes it'll not tell you exactly, so it'll say this needs to happen, and then you have to figure out how to make this happen, that kind of thing. But certainly enough of a clue to get through it if you're stuck. So I did have to use the walkthrough on a couple of occasions, and yeah, that's not to say that these, you know, the puzzles were just outrageously difficult. It's just you get to the point where you feel like you've checked everything in a given environment, and you feel like there's nothing left for me to interact with, and I'm still not getting anywhere, and it gets a bit frustrating. So then, yeah, check the walkthrough, and then I actually did miss something. I actually didn't interact with that. So that happened a couple of times. It's quite a short game. It's like split into 4 chapters. Each chapter, you know, you can get through each chapter in on your first play around 45 minutes, maybe even less. If you really kind of speed through it, you could do it even quicker than that. But yeah, it's quite a short game, but it's a nice little experience. It's all right. It's a curious one to have come out on disc with it being so short. But I'm always grateful for anything that does come out on disc. You get this poster with it, and that is sort of the crescendo of the game. Is you end up going to this magic show with this evil magician guy. On the other side, you've got this sort of cop blueprint thing. But yeah, always nice to get a physical version. Short game, it's all right if you like that kind of thing. Point and click, investigation sort of game. It's all right. It's fun. It's average. I don't know. I give it 6 out of 10. It's all right. The other two games. So that game was called Retropolis 2. And it had this sort of film noir, sort of 1920s vibe to it, although with robots. So that's the retro element to that game. And point and click, I guess, it's quite retro as well. The other two games are retro for different reasons. This first one, or the second game to talk about, is Arcade Paradise. This is a curious one. So I've seen a few reviews of this, and so I already kind of obviously knew about it. I wasn't fully sold on it, even though the reviews were singing its praises. I couldn't quite see how that would really be that appealing, but the basic premise of the game is you're working for I think it's your uncle's laundrette. So you actually start off the game having to do sort of these menial tasks, loading up washing machines and dryers, and getting clothes through the laundrette, and clearing up and scrubbing the toilet. So all these like really just sort of mundane tasks, really. What on the surface of it, it sounds like they're mundane tasks, but it actually gets quite addictive. Going through the process of putting clothes in the washer, making sure it's set right in the dryer, making sure that's set right, getting them out, and you get money for each one. And you get a rank for how well you've done it, how accurately, and all the rest of it. So it actually becomes quite fun and addictive to work in this laundrette, to build up money, because your side project is building a secret arcade out the back of this laundrette. And you scale up as you go. Of course, you make more money, you can buy more arcade cabinets, you can expand the size of the arcade behind the laundrette, and I'm not too concerned about giving spoilers to this game, because it's not really about that. I won't talk about the sort of story that goes around with it, but yeah, the premise is you're building up this arcade of yours, and of course you get to play all the arcade cabinets, and that's not just for fun. There's a lot of sort of retro-themed arcade cabinets, things, based on real old arcade cabs that you'll remember, things like, Space Invaders, Arkanoid, there's a lot of those kind of things. But there's also some sort of VR-focused, sort of physical arcade cabs as well. Like there's a basketball hoop where you're actually physically making the motion to try and get baskets. Or there's punching pads that pop up. So there's some that actually have VR actions. Most of the arcade cabinets are just button presses, because this game was originally flat before it came to VR. But it's got this really addictive game loop of and you're always working towards this goal of sort of further increasing the size of your arcade, and you can do a lot of cool things with the arcade cabinets. You can kind of set parameters on the arcade cabs to try and make as much money as possible. So changing the difficulty, changing how much each game costs to play, and that kind of thing. So your goal is just basically to keep building it up. And it's got a fun end game, I'll say that. I don't, not to give too many spoilers, but it's a satisfying end game sort of scenario. And of course, once you've sort of completed the main sort of trajectory in the game, you can carry on visiting the arcade and playing all the arcades, try and get your high scores, whatever else. But when it got to that point, when I sort of completed what you could do in terms of expanding the arcade, I didn't really feel like I wanted to carry on with the arcade cabs. They're all very, very simple games, and they're engaging for long enough to, whilst you've got objectives in mind, i.e. building up more money to be able to buy upgrades and various things that you can purchase. But once that's done, I kind of had my fill for it. So it lasted me probably about 2 weeks maybe playing this game, but I was playing it like every day. I got pretty much obsessed with it. So Arcade Paradise is actually really good. And I got it, it's on sale, I believe probably still is on sale. I waited for that to happen. I think that's true. Yeah. Yeah, so that's Arcade Paradise. Obviously another retro themed game, actually with retro video games. And there's one very, very, very cool. Oh, I don't want to give that away. If you get this game, there's a cool achievement. I'm not going to say anymore. Just if you get it, you'll find it eventually, and it's got some very cool moments in the game. So yeah, I really enjoy that Arcade Paradise. The last one is Ancient Dungeon. So this is retro because it's sort of like the graphics are sort of Minecraft-esque, sort of very pixel blocky. There's a name for that. What is the name for that? I can't remember. Voxel art. Yeah. So it looks very basic, but performance-wise, it runs smooth as butter. Very, very high frame rate. I believe it's 120 unreprojected. Good resolution. Obviously, good use of the OLED panel. See, the blacks are pure black. So everything feels really solid and nice, even though it has this simple look to the graphics. Yeah, the performance is fantastic. And the gameplay loop itself is just butter. It's absolute perfection, gameplay perfection. Everything just works. Yeah, I'm sure this has been said before in reviews of this game, but it's very, very addictive game loop. It's basically a roguelite. So you're going into these dungeons, you loot a lot of cash to buy upgrades with, to get through, and there's a boss, but once you beat that boss, it's obviously not the end as a roguelite. You come back to your sort of initial hub world where you can upgrade your weapons and buy upgrades for the dungeons, or that'll change things about the dungeons to your advantage and stuff like this. And the game sort of keeps drip feeding elements to it, gameplay elements. So it manages to stay fresh for quite a long time, even though you're sort of essentially doing the same thing over and over again, going into these dungeons, fighting your way through to the end boss. I think it's like 4 or 5. I think it's like 5 levels you get through till you get to the boss. But yeah, because it keeps putting in new elements, like new enemies, new hazards, new types of rooms, and that kind of thing. It manages to keep feeling fresh for quite a long time. And I was playing this game for a good long while, and I've played enough of it to think that enough to include it in this video. Although I can't say I've technically sort of really finished it because you can carry on, so that, but it has got some interesting end game content as well. But Arcade Paradise is a lot of fun. I can fully recommend that. Out of the three, I'd say Arcade Paradise is probably my favourite. I've had the most hours in it, and it's got the most fun gameplay. Like it's the most VRAF of the three, I would say, probably. Although Arcade Paradise is very, very fun as well. It just didn't last as long because it has this very definite sort of end point. Once you reach that, for me personally anyway, I didn't feel too motivated to carry on using the arcade cabs in there. Because while each game is fun in its own right, they're very, very simple. As retro games often were. But fun, but good. So that's it. That's 3 more PSVR2 games that I've managed to sort of get through. And so I'm making good progress. And it's a good time to sort of clear some of this backlog because it's going to get crazy. In the next few months, there are quite a lot of big PSVR2 releases coming. So, yeah, my wallet is groaning at the prospect. But that's it. All right, guys. See you in the next vid. Bye-bye.